Lesson 7.1, Finding a Place to Live. Your introduction article, Where Will You Live? Please read this so you are familiar with the terminology that we'll be using this lesson. Example number 1. Alex makes $61,992 per year and pays about 25% of his gross monthly income. So what does gross monthly income mean? This is before taxes. So he doesn't bring home all of this. He's got taxes that he still has to take out. And those are federal and state taxes. He wants to find an apartment to rent. Estimate how much he can afford to pay for rent each month. Then determine how much money he will have after taxes and rent are paid. So first thing we want to figure out is, what is his monthly salary? He makes this much per year. So if you have that much per year and divide it by 12 months, we will figure out how much he gets paid per month before taxes. So $61,992 divided by our 12 gives us $5,166. This is his monthly gross salary. So that's how much he gets before his taxes are taken out. So the next thing, let's figure out what are actually his monthly taxes. And it said that he pays 25%. So we know that this is his monthly salary. And he is going to pay 25% of that monthly salary is going to end up going to taxes. So 25% of that monthly salary, of means you're timesing. So you're going to multiply these two together. 25% is 0.25 because you have to convert it into a decimal. And when you multiply these two together, you end up getting $1,291.50. What is this? This is his monthly taxes. Well, now we need to figure out his rent, because remember, he's looking for an apartment to rent. If you're renting, the rent rule is to find something between 25 and 30% of your monthly salary. And right in the middle of that is 28. So we're going to use 28% of the monthly salary as our good estimating point. So if it is 20% of, that means it's 28% times his monthly salary. This will give us a good estimate of how much he could afford. So remember, percent needs to be changed into a decimal. And if you multiply these two together, you get $1,446.48. But what was this? This was how much of the affordable rent that we are estimating. So the question was, estimate how much he can afford to pay for rent. That's how much he can afford to pay to rent. Then determine how much money he will have after taxes and rent are paid. So we're trying to figure out how much money is left over. So every single month he gets $5,166. This is his monthly salary. We need to remove the taxes, so we're taking away the taxes, and we need to remove, which means we need to take away his monthly rent as well. If we took away his taxes and his rent, he would end up having $2,428.02 remaining. So this is his remaining funds. Now let's go ahead and check your understanding. Bethany's monthly gross income, which means before taxes, is $3,840. She pays 24% of her monthly gross earnings to federal and state taxes. So let's figure out that first before we read the rest of the problem. It said that 24% of it goes to taxes. So how much of her monthly income goes to taxes? So we know that 24% of, which means we're multiplying it by her monthly income. So 24% of means multiply to her monthly income. Remember, we need to change your percent into a decimal, and then we are going to multiply that to her monthly income. So we found out that $921.60 is what she is going to be paying to taxes. She pays 24% of her monthly gross earnings to her taxes. That's that. 15% goes to her student loan. So let's figure out now her student loan. That's 15%, and it's 15% of her monthly gross income, her monthly paycheck. So 15%, remember the percent needs to be changed into a decimal. So 15% of her monthly paycheck, this gives us $576 that is going to loans. So 15% went to her student loans. So these are our current two debts. Bethany now uses 15% of her monthly income to pay towards her credit card balance. So we've got a credit card balance as well. It said 15%. We already calculated 15%. So we know that $576 is going to go to her credit cards. So where did this come from? It says that 15% goes to her credit card balance. Well, we already figured out what 15% was because 15% is going to student loans. These are the same percentage, which meant the same amount of money is going to both student loans and credit cards. So now she paid her credit card balance. She wants to rent an apartment that will cost $1,800 per month. The question is, will she be able to make the payment without changing any of these accounts and dues? So let's figure out, can she do it? She has $3,840, and this is her monthly salary. She is going to pay $921.60 to taxes. She's going to pay $576 to loans, and she's going to pay another $576 to credit cards. How much money does she have left? If you have her monthly salary and you take away all these payments, she has $1,766.40 remaining. The question is, she wants to rent an apartment that is $1,800 per month. Can she afford it? No, she cannot afford it. Not only can she not afford it after she pays these 3 dues, that isn't even remotely close. She still hasn't paid for food. She hasn't paid for her utilities. She hasn't paid for living. So she definitely cannot afford this apartment. You have another introductory article within 7.1, so please read this so you're familiar with our terminology. Example 2. Rufus and Maria have both been offered new jobs in a different city. A real estate broker sent them a listing of apartments in their desired location showing the square footage for each apartment, and then its accompanying monthly rent. Recall what you learned about regression lines in correlation coefficients. We are going to use Desmos to help us with both of these concepts. So you are going to need to get onto Desmos. It says use the linear regression analysis to determine if there is a correlation between the square footage of the rental property and the amount charged for monthly rent. Will my square footage determine in a nice predictable fashion what the monthly rent is? That is what the question is asking you. And we're going to use the Desmos regression line to figure this out. So let's go ahead and go into Desmos. So I use the provided link to access the Desmos linear regression program. I have a blank table. In this blank table, I need to input my data. So we're going to go ahead and type in the information that we were given in our table. I've inputted all of the data, and as I was doing that, I was noticing that the data points were coming up onto my graph, as well as a line was being predicted. This is the linear regression line, and it is based off of the points that we typed into our table. Please copy this table down onto our notes, as well as the information that you have down here. We're going to take a look at these and see what they mean to us. So in the Desmos that we just looked at, we found that our graph looked about like this. And then from there, you had a couple of points that were really close, and then a couple of points above it that were really close. You had 2 that were kind of far. You had 2 on this 3, actually, on the same exact line. And then you had 1 like randomly out here. This is what your Desmos graph looked like. And looking at this, we're supposed to determine if we see a correlation. Correlation is asking you, do the dots all kind of stick really close together to this line? And mine do. My dots are not just randomly out here haphazardly. My dots are really close to this line, which means I do have a strong correlation. And since it's going up as we read it from left to right, it's a strong positive correlation. There's another way that you can determine this. On Desmos, you noticed you had the values of R squared, R, M, and B. We can visually tell if we have a strong correlation or not. If the dots are going along the line in a very tight cluster, it's a strong correlation. But how strong is that correlation? That is what this R factor tells us. The closer it is to 1, the stronger the correlation. Because 0.96 is very close to 1, there is a strong correlation. Now what if your R was 1? If your R was 1, that meant all of your dots were actually on your line. So visually, we saw that there was a positive correlation. But how strong, you cannot tell by the graph. We had to go to the R. Because your R is very close to 1, that represents a very strong correlation. What does this all mean? This means that we can come up with a y equals mx plus b equation and use this formula to determine the cost of a square footage that isn't in here. They gave you your m, which is your slope, and they gave you your b, which was your y-intercept. So my equation is 0.91, we're going to round the m, plus 403.09. We are rounding the b. This is our prediction equation that says they can input any x value of square footage and get your answer of a y monthly rent because there is such a strong correlation. This will allow them to predict a monthly rent for any apartment. Let's go ahead and check your understanding. Based on what we just did, it's asking what is a good estimate for the amount of monthly rent charged for an 880 square foot apartment. We came up with this prediction line equation based on our strong correlation regression line, where x is the square footage and y is your monthly rent. They are giving us a square footage. Because we have this strong correlation regression line, we are able to put the square footage in for x. So this is x equals 880. We're going to put that in for x, and we can go ahead and solve for y. So typing this into your calculator, you get a y value to be $1,203.89. And what is this? This is actually the monthly rent. So they found an 880 square foot apartment. Using this prediction line, they are able to determine that the rent is going to be about this much each month. Now let's go ahead and extend your understanding. Using the formula we just found in example 2, this prediction line for the city that they are moving in. How many square feet might an apartment with a monthly rent of $1,400 have? The rent was our y. If this is how much we paid, what's our square footage? So we are going to substitute the y value that we know, and we are going to solve for x. So we found our x value, but what does this mean? This means that the apartment would be about 1,096, because we're going to round, square feet, and cost $1,400. So if that's how much they have, then this is how large of an apartment that they will be able to find. You have another introduction article, Lease Signing Costs. Please read this so you're familiar with our terminology. Example number 3. Rufus and Maria paid $200 for an application deposit for a 1,150 square foot apartment in example 2. They're required to provide a credit report that costs $25 and a security deposit equal to 1 month's rent. The landlord is also requiring last month's rent at the time of signing the lease. The broker is charging 10% of the yearly rent. That's his dues, that's his fee, his fine for finding you an apartment. How much should they expect to pay to be able to move into the apartment? So they're not even moved in yet. How much have they paid? So let's go back and read through this. So Rufus and Maria paid a $200 application deposit. So they have an application fee. So they just paid $200. And this is how large the apartment was. Oh, so if that's how large the apartment is, then we know what our first and our last month's rent is going to be. Now, why do I care about first and last? It's because you need to pay first month's when you move in. And then it said that the landlord requires last month's rent. This never tells us how expensive the rent is going to be, but it did tell us that this is from example 2, which means I need to look for the 1,150 square foot apartment in example 2 to find out what the rent is going to be. And when you do that, you found the rent was $1,595. So there's first and last month's rent. They're required to pay a credit report. So here is my credit report. It says the credit report is $25. They need to pay a security deposit. And it says the security deposit is 1 month's rent. Well, that was the month's rent, so this is $1,595. The landlord requires last month's rent at the time of signing. We already put that in there. The broker is charging 10% of the yearly rent. So let's get our broker's fee. So it is going to be 10% of, now I need my yearly rent. This is my rent for 1 month, multiply that by 12, and you get your yearly rent. So 10% of the yearly rent gives me $1,914 that I have to pay the broker for finding me my apartment. How much do they expect to pay to be able to move into the apartment? These are all the bills that we just read through. So we need to add this all together, and this tells us how much they owe before they can even get the key. And if you add that all together, we get it is $6,924 worth of dues before even moving in. So yes, your monthly rent is only $1,595. But because they require first and last and a security deposit, and you have to pay them for finding it, and there's an application fee and a credit report, it turns out that you have to have $6,924 ready to give them before they'll even give you the key. Now let's go ahead and check your understanding. Larry is renting an apartment that costs our dollars per month. He must pay a $100 application fee and a $25 credit fee. His security deposit is 2 months' rent, and he must also pay last month's rent upon signing the lease. His broker is going to charge him 5% of the total year's rent as the fee for finding the apartment. Expressed in terms of R, the total cost of signing the lease. So we need to figure out what each due was. So reading again. Larry is renting an apartment that will cost our dollars per month. So we know that he has to pay the first month, and that due is R. He must pay a $100 application fee. So here's his application fee. Says he also is charged a $25 credit report fee. His security deposit is 2 months' rent. So the monthly rent is R. So 2 months would have been 2 R's. He must also pay last month's rent upon signing the lease. So you also need last month's rent, and every month's rent is R. His broker is going to charge him 5% of the total year's rent. So now we have our broker fee of the whole year's rent. So 12 of these monthly payments. So 5% of the 12 monthly payments gives me 0.6 R. So basically 60% of the rent goes to the broker. Expressed in terms of R, the total cost for signing the lease. So you need to add all of this up. So I have an R plus a 100 plus a 25 plus a 2R and another R and plus a 0.6 R. We are going to be combining like terms. And remember, with like terms, R's can only go with other R's. So all these R's are going to be added together. So R plus 2R gives me 3. Add one more R gives me 4. Add to a 0.6 R gives me a 4.6 R. And then the numbers get added together, and that's 125. So this is his equation, 4.6 R plus 125.